Welcome to the Fit Drivers Podcast, sponsored by PrePass. Only PrePass provides weigh station, bypass, and integrated electronic toll payment services, saving you time, fuel, and money while improving safety and efficiency in trucking. Visit prepass.com for details. Gosh, Doctor, thank you so much. As I said earlier before we jumped on, I've been really looking forward to this. I'm really very, very appreciative for you to come on and do this. The Fit Drivers Podcast, of course, which is sponsored by PrePass, is to identify and really educate everybody on how bad the critical health is of professional drivers, their job duties out there, and so forth. But before I get into my questions, take a few minutes and tell our listeners, Dr. Sieber, about the research that you do with the CDC.
Good morning, Bob. It's very much of a pleasure for me to talk with you, and particularly to talk about one of my favorite subjects, long-haul trucking and health and injury in that profession. I look forward to our discussion this morning. My research here at CDC has involved long-haul truck driver health and injury. What we did is we conducted a national survey in which we collected health and injury data from a nationally representative sample of long-haul truck drivers. From this data, we estimated how common certain health conditions, certain injuries, and risk factors were among long-haul truck drivers. We collected data from 1,600 long-haul truck drivers at 32 different truck stops across the lower 48 states. Some important findings resulted from this. First of all, we found out that both obesity and smoking were twice as likely among long-haul truck drivers compared to other adults working in the entire United States. And secondly, 61% of drivers said they had two or more of the following risk factors: hypertension, obesity, smoking, high cholesterol, little or no physical activity during the previous 7 days, and 6 or fewer hours of sleep per 24-hour period. Now, information such as this from our study also provided basic health and injury data for the Department of Transportation and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to guide development of their driver health and safety policy. Once we had completed our survey, we wanted to understand specifically what type of research was needed to be done in transportation. So we held a series of listening sessions with partners. Our partners included the FMCSA again, and representatives from industry, unions, associations, trade groups, academia, as well as consultants. During the sessions, we learned about concerns for health and well-being, how to adapt and use technologies such as smart devices to collect health data, and how best to share health information and appropriate training needed for transportation workers.
Well, very interesting. So it's a pretty in-depth figure, or study. And I wanted to ask you, Doctor, so I get a lot of my data from the FMCSA, right? And also from the folks at the Virginia Tech Research Institute. And as they acknowledge, as you know, drivers get a 2-year card at the most. But what I try to get people to really understand in the midst of always talking about there's a driver shortage, that almost 58% of those card holders out there, those medical card holders, are operating on a 1-year or less medical card. Would you find that pretty adequate with your research that you've done that there's obviously a large percentage of drivers out there, more than 50%, that are operating on a 1 year card or less?
Yes, a couple of things here. First of all, about that 50% figure, or 60%, I should say. Uh, this figure varies in different studies. 60% is that figure has been relatively constant across different years with different studies. I further, Bob, went and looked at information from our survey where we calculated how common certain heart conditions, and I looked at for certain conditions how many individuals might be disqualified. There are 12 common disqualifying conditions I'll get into a little later. I considered actually conditions for diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, if the physician had mentioned that. And I did find results very similar to what the 1.5 million drivers with less than 1 year or less certification. No, I do not find the results that you're quoting surprising at all. They're similar to the ones I found from our uh, survey here. I mentioned the different conditions for disqualifying. Just to review those, some of those have to do with respiratory dysfunction, epilepsy, vision, hearing, drug use, alcoholism, psychiatrics, and again, extreme hypertension.
Right, right. Well, we know that the life of a professional driver is pretty difficult, long haul especially, right? And I know I read on the CD site they talk about that it's one of the most unhealthiest professions you can be in, correct? And according to their job qualifications, responsibilities, what they have to do, being away from home. And so, doctor, I really the question I really wanted to ask your professional opinion. I always compare drivers to like professional athletes, right? Except they're not running up and down a football field or basketball court or so forth. And much like in professional sports, how they have had to, increase concussion protocols, right? Because sometimes when you work in an environment or a profession that is detrimental to your health, I think companies have a certain responsibility to protect that person from themselves, right? Players want to play, drivers want to drive. So I just am always trying to get companies, to do more to offer and give drivers wellness tools, opportunities to, stay in check with what's, as I say, peek under their own personal hood to see what's going on. And so I wanted to get your opinion about that. Do you believe that when you work for an organization or company and you're in an environment that could be very dangerous to your health, that there should be some special training and education and tools to help those men and women protect themselves?
Can I break, Bob, before we get to that? There was a question about educating drivers. Do you want me to
Right.
answer that or
Please. No,
skip to
no,
this
please.
question?
No, go answer about the education piece. That'd be great.
Okay, the question you asked directly.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Uh, okay, so that won't be giving. Um,
He said go ahead and talk about the education piece, I think.
okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. And then I'll go on to the other one. Uh, first of all, our partners mentioned health problems among drivers. That definitely shows a need for better health information and training programs. Eating healthier options, exercising, and sleep time are some of the most important things. And we found also from our survey as well as listed on the CDC website. I'll just give you some quick figures of what we found for drivers at truck stops. In the truck stops we studied, 50% didn't offer fresh fruit, and 37% didn't even offer fresh vegetables in the restaurant. However, I do notice that many shops and truck chains have recently begun offering a more diverse menu and healthy options, which is really great. None of the truck stops we visited at that time offered exercise facilities, and most didn't even have a walking path. CDC recommends 30 minutes per day of moderate to vigorous activities, such as simply taking a brisk walk. It also recommends 2 days per week of some type of muscle strengthening activities, lifting weights or whatever you have to. And finally, we found out that 26% of drivers averaged 6 or fewer hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. The recommended amount of sleep is 7 or more hours per day for adults. Now, about education programs. There are some federal health and education programs for truck drivers which have been developed. They include the Getting in Gear program developed by the FMCSA and the American Trucking Association, as well as the North American Fatigue Management Program, or NAFMP. Both these programs involve classroom instruction. Health and wellness programs sponsored by employers or coaching programs are, of course, other possibilities and should be encouraged. There are many of these out there, as I think Bob has mentioned previously. Although there is clearly a need for educating drivers, we've found out from partners and elsewhere from the other sources available. One problem in reaching people, maybe we can discuss this, is how best to reach drivers. They may be hard to contact, always on the road, or in a hurry to deliver freight on time schedule. Classroom instruction is one possibility, but that requires attendance. Internet podcasts of healthy practices for drivers, such as this podcast, sponsored by PrePass, is another possibility, as well as holding virtual classes, um, CDs, or other podcasts over the internet are another possibility. It has even been suggested that one method would be for contacting drivers' families about health information and work from there. An additional problem which we are working out is how to maintain the driver's participation through the entire instruction period. So, yes, health programs should be a large part of the driver education, finding out about what specifically type of problems they may be up against, as well as how to minimize that and what they might expect from them. The need for such education and health support is, as Bob mentioned, it is important since the average age of truck drivers is 47 years old, and there is a shortage of drivers forecasted due to industry growth and increased demand to transport freight.
Yeah, and that's always a kind of, I guess you say, controversial subject, doctors, because a lot of it, in which I'm a firm believer in as well, is that a lot of it has to do with retention. Like in any industry, right?
Turnover.
Hanging on to the drivers you have,
Mhm.
right? The turnover. And when I look at the numbers, such as you talked about, the number on short-term cards, if we did more to help those men and women, get prepared to do vacations and help them with manage their blood pressure, their sugars you identified, then we would be able to hang on to some of those skilled drivers. We wouldn't see as many of them get disqualified. And that's my point talking about. I'm really trying to create the momentum for carriers. They spend thousands and thousands of dollars on technology to help manage their equipment, right? Preventive maintenance. They can now tell you, I don't know if you spend much around this part of the technology and trucking for their equipment, but they can actually tell the shop, the garage, that if this particular truck is very close to maybe possibly the engine blowing up, but they don't do enough to do some pre-screenings to offer for driver to see how their engine's doing, right? I mean, it seems like a large truck engine blows up, truck is stop, and the horrific disaster that could take that driver behind the wheel of a tractor trailer, and they have a heart attack, the collateral damage that could cause. Have you ever done any research in the area of migraine headaches as it relates to drivers because of the stress level they're under, and any research that you've been involved in that talks about the prevalence of migraines in professional drivers?
No, I haven't. We have not looked at that specific problem. There is a increasingly a push into looking at what I'll call psychosocial factors. Now, migraines are a specific condition, but other things leading into stress in the organizational work, things along that lines, an increasing push along those lines, but not specifically to migraines, which is one of the conditions that can lead to disqualification.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I know that from my, own personal coaching experience and from my network of coaches that I talk with, we talk about that. And, it's the stress, right? Because they're on time deliveries. And like I talk to people all the time, they don't realize that, when, as they say in trucking, when the wheels aren't turning, and they're turning, right? They're paid by the mile. And
That's right. Yeah.
so, in that part of the country, especially in Ohio, and that busy 75, when the winter comes and there's snowstorms and those poor men and women are sitting there alongside the road, they're burning time. And so, when the weather permits or construction, whatever, they've got to go deliver, right? They've got to continue on the route and they got to deliver. Um, so I think you mentioned earlier when you were talking about the value, but I just wanted to hear it from you again about. I just really believe there's huge, in my experience in coaching drivers and for companies, huge value proposition in being able to provide health coaching to those drivers who want to hear it and want to participate. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And for a couple of reasons, I feel there is great value in driver health coaching. One thing is that such coaching is often done by former drivers, or but current drivers can often better relate to these people and better accepting the training that they're receiving. Driver health coaching can also serve as a measure, as we've mentioned before, Bob, about maintaining the existing workforce as well as the services trucking provides. You mentioned if the wheels aren't turning, there's no money, there's no delivery or anything. A lot of other business. And finally, coaching can also minimize the potential for driver accidents over time. There has been a relationship between particularly obesity and the prevalence of accidents. On the company level, I'd just like to bring up another point. Sometimes we don't think about, but driver coaching and instituting health and wellness programs can actually help to decrease insurance costs and premiums when companies realize that such a program is in effect. So overall, I see coaching as a very proactive approach to driver health and wellness.
it certainly would help with the turnover, like I talked about, and put a
Mhm.
a positive dent into the driver turnover and so forth. Well, that's great. So, yeah, good. So, thank you for hanging in there with us today. Good doctor, I appreciate it. So, I think we're just about ready to wrap up. I just wanted to extend a sincerely thank you for joining us today, and I hope that we can talk again sometime soon. If you've got any more research that you're working on that you think would be of great value that we could share with our audience and the folks at Prepass to talk about it, please let me know if you have any more research coming your way that we could discuss that would add value to the driver health and safety.
Thank you very much, Bob. And I will keep that in mind. I think I'll be in touch about something along those lines
Yeah,
that we're working.
yeah, I know I have. You're probably familiar with the researchers at Virginia Tech
Of
Institute of
course.
Research.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they were on, and they did a really great job. And to your note about what you talked about earlier, the value of health education, they talked about that they've got studies that show that people with those high risk issues, that if they go untreated, it's very unsafe to be out there on the road driving, right? But those who are being treated and getting support are much safer driver.
Yes. Yes, they've done. They also have a recent report. Well, I guess you saw the recent report about the certification issues. The 60% I was referring to. You have that, and they
Right.
have been working about. Okay.
Yeah.
Aaron, Aaron Mabry has been working on that.
Yeah. Dr. Mayberry, yeah, she was on with Suzanne, her colleague, and they were awesome. They were great.
Hmm.
Um, they were both were on at the same time, and they did a great job. In fact, I think I sent you a sample of their on their interview. They did a great job. But anyway, so this is good information, good stuff. I appreciate it from coming from a driver health advocate and the father and brother of drivers. I have two brothers out there still driving today in
Well,
northeastern Ohio. So and happy to say, doctor, that one of them has 3 million safe miles and the other one has 2 million
wow,
safe miles.
that's that's an accomplishment. That's really wonderful. Three
Yeah, it
million,
is.
two
It is.
million miles. Yeah. There aren't that many
Yeah.
drivers with it. There are some, but
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. All right, doctor, thank you so much. And we'll be back in touch soon. And I appreciate it. And we'll get you a copy of the podcast.
okay. Thank you very much, Bob. And thank
All
you
right.
also, Bryce and Dominique, for helping with the podcast.
You bet.
Take care and
Thank
have a
you,
great day
doctor.
then.
Only Prepass provides way station, bypass, and integrated electronic toll payment services. Visit prepass.com for details.